Hello again, and it's time for another project. Today we're going to do some router work on this little plaque here. It measures in 13 inches by 9.5 inches across, and we're going to route it out on 12mm plywood. Now, I've done a few projects on plywood. Personally myself, I think it routes out really nice. You will find the odd void in there, and for me personally, I tend to use resin on my plywood projects, just so it covers any little holes or any imperfections we find as we're routing out. Now on this one, the plaque is going to be, I don't have the time or the crayons to explain this to you. Don't know why, I was just on the internet, just scrolling through like you do, and this one just took my fancy. So we're going to routing out all the white areas, basically just leaving all the letters stood up slightly by 3mm, and then we'll paint it nice colourful crayon colours, and the back section will be inlaid with black resin. And the framework itself, we'll either paint that or stain it. So let's start from the beginning. So we've printed off our image. Now the way I transfer is to stick it down. Now on this one, I actually printed the image off, and then when I laid it onto the actual wood itself, the plywood, I just wanted to fill it in. So I literally just got a pair of scissors and just cut it and basically just spread it open. These are a little bit too close. If you imagine that one against here, these letters, they're almost touching. So I've just cut and spread them out equally. Popped in our carbon paper and literally just trace over that with a pen or a pencil. I prefer to use a pen just so the blue stands out. But you just take 5 minutes and that will transfer your image on like so. So that is all nicely transferred over. The spacing's all right, everything fits in place. Plus also, you can now use that template over and over again. I have seen different router projects where some people can stick the template straight to the wood and route over the top. I did try that once. It definitely didn't work for me. Just too messy and you can't see your lines, but you find a method that works for you. So nice fresh carbon paper. I think this one's appeared in all my videos. That just doesn't work anymore, but it would serve the purpose to show you guys. And there is our template, all nicely ready to route out. If you wanted to, you could take your time and just go around and shade in the areas that you want to remove. Like inside that one there, we want to remove that. And in there, just so you don't go away, come back and start moving the old letter. We want the letter staying, so take 5 minutes or so just to sort out where the bits you want to route out, and obviously we want to remove all that outer section as well. Okay, we get the general idea from that. Now the bits for me, as always, now there is different bits out there. There's profile bits, liner bits, and they come with a good price. If you're just starting off with routing, get yourself a little packet of what we call CNC bits. I think they are actually CPD bits, computerized, programmed, I don't know, but anyway, you use them in a CNC machine, so they call them CNC bits. They come in different degrees. They're 15s, they're 20s and 30s, and that literally just the end piece. The degree is the angle on the end. Now you can see how pointed that one is. That will be a 15, and that's ideal for us. We're not too bothered about sloping sides or the angle. We are literally going to fill all this back in with resin. So we'll pop one of those into an adapter collet. I'll just find it in a minute on the table. Okay, there's the adapter collet. I'd actually left it in the router and I just removed it just to show you. That basically is just a small tube. This is a 6.35mm. That allows you to slot in your CNC bit, which is a 3.175mm. You just slot that into there. That has now got the 1/4 inch shaft on it, and that will fit your router, no problem. If your router takes 1/2 inch shanks, you're going to need a bigger adapter. So we use this little bit here to do all our line work. We'll go around the outer section, remember, up to the line on all these lettering. Once we've done the lettering itself, excuse me, and the framework. Now the framework, I'm just going to route out this all the way around, just to give us a nice frame, basically a barrier, so we can put our resin into the back section. If you wanted to, you could have a ready-made frame, a recycled frame, or you could sit your wood on top, just as easy. But for me personally, we'll just route out the frame. I'll show you that near the time as regarding to keeping a straight line. But for now, we're going to pop this in our CNC bit. We will do all our lines. Now I work on 3mm, which is basically, let's say, the thickness of that 3.175. And I just made a little gauge. And I believe it's a number 2 there, look, that's nice and smooth. That one's just a little bit deeper. There is depth gauges you can purchase off eBay or Amazon. So we will set this in the router, like so. Put the router on top of here, and we'll set it to that depth of 3mm. Now that's plenty deep enough to make a project, be it if you were putting paint in or resin, as I'm going to do. So we will set it to that depth and literally do all our lines. Once we've done all the lines, if you've seen my previous videos, I do like these end milling bits. These are fantastic. These have been well worn now. You see the colour of those. And we'll just get one of a nice size. It fits into the same adapter. You will get a lot more projects out of that. Do not throw that away for sure. And you slot that into there. I go up to this bracket, this coloured bracket. Now you can still find them with those on, but they do come without them, but they are exactly the same piece. And we'd also set that to 3mm, and I'll just use this to clean out all the surrounding area. These are all quite tight and near together, so we just want something that can just fit down those letters and not cause any damage. Now there is bigger bits out there. You'll find out as you start searching nice big chunky pieces like this, they will just rip that apart. If you come in with that big section, as you come to your delicate letters, it's gone. So you don't want them big ones, but they are out there if you're doing bigger projects. They're called straight flush bits, and they actually come blue now. They're the same ones, but they're coloured red. So we will use them on another project. So for now, the CNC bit, if I can just find it, inside an adapter collet, and we'll start routing this one out, all the letters, at basically 3mm. Right, so we're all ready to route out. We've got the CNC bit in the router, you can just see there in our adapter collet, and we've set it to roughly about 3mm, one of those that just fits on nicely. So that's our depth gauge there all set. You will find as I go along, these smaller sections within the letters, we'll just remove that with the CNC bit, and then when we come back with the end milling bits to clean out with, we can just use one of these as our depth gauge by literally just putting the router on there and setting the bit to the same as that. Okay, let's start routing this one out. We'll do it nice and steady, and then we'll speed things up as we go along. Right, so we've gone round all the letters. Remember with your routing, you don't want to route out on the line. If it's outset lettering like these, up to the line. If it's inset, so basically removing the letters, then you'll go up to the line that way. So if you look really close, on 90% of this, you should still be able to see the little pencil lines here. Remember, we've gone up. If you're a route on the line itself, you imagine a small section like that. By the time you've routed out on that line above and below it, that section there would be a lot narrower. One looks like now on your smaller section. It doesn't have to be spot on. these smaller letterings here, we've managed to get around there. Okay, as you can see. So just before we do away with the CNC bit, we want to route out the framework. Now for me personally, I will just do this freehand. I'm not overly concerned how straight it is. If you want a perfect straight frame on your little project, my router comes with what they call a micro adjuster, and I can just get my router around this stand without damaging anything. That basically slots into there, I believe, and then you set it up on there, and you can adjust it with these end things, and you can basically just slide that down, and that will slide your router down at the same time. I have used it the once, it just didn't quite work for me. Another option, if you want perfectly straight edges, is to get yourself a piece of wood, which is obviously nice and straight, and you can place your router into this corner where you want it, line up your wood, and basically put a little clamp on there, and same at the end, line it up, put yourself a clamp on there. I might have one just to hand to show you, if I can just find it. Stuck behind me here, just give me 2 seconds. So you basically pop a little clamp on, you will have to come to the end of the table and clamp it down, and that way you can use that piece of wood as a guideline, and then when you do your side sections, you literally put your router where you want to start, move your wood up, put your router, line your wood up, clamp it down, and then you'll have a nice straight edge. Just do a nice straight line. Just a couple of options here, but personally myself, we'll just go around this freehand, and then we'll be on to popping on the end milling bit and start clearing all this back section out. Right, so we've made it all the way around with our final CNC bit there, just to make a nice frame, and that's certainly near enough for what I needed. We are going to go around with some sandpaper and an engraving bit on the Dremel, just to give it a general tidy up, so if it's not where you want it, I'm sure a bit of sanding down will just help it nicely on its way. Right, so that's it for the CNC bit. So we've took the adapter and the bit out of the router. You'll get a lot more projects out of that. And we're going to pop in one of these end milling bits. Now remember, these are the bits I use. CNC bits for the lines, end milling bits, and straight bits to remove all the clear out bits. There's, excuse me, there's profile bits, liner bits, spiral upcuts, I believe. I've never used any of those. They're a bit out of my price range, so I just stick with nice eBay specials like this, or Amazon. Now that's your end milling bit. We've gone for a nice small one here. That's what's going to allow us to get into these tighter areas in between these letters. So we're just basically going to set it to one of the depths we've got there, put our router over the top, set it to that depth, and then basically just remove all the back section. Just nice and steady. You do find once you get into the zone and you use one of these little bits, it soon comes out before you know it. Okay, let's route the background out. Right, so we've made it all the way round with that little end milling bit there. Now it looks quite small, but it does the job. Seriously, it might seem a lot to remove with such a little piece, but as you're going along, because we have already cut round these. Now somebody did message me the other day saying, is it possible to do a project with just that piece? Yes, it is, and you could actually do this with just this one piece, but because we've gone round with the CNC bit first, remember we did all our lines. When you're coming in with your end milling bit up to that line you've cut out, these side sections pop out really nice, and it's a lot quicker than trying to go round with one of these and then going up to the edge there, and you're just putting more strain on the bit and on the router itself. So it's always advisable to go around with the profile bit, a liner bit, or in my case I go around with the little CNC bit there. You'll certainly find your own way of doing things. Now the only downside with plywood, and I have mentioned it before, is the quality of plywood. Now we've got a big line running the full length of that, and we've got a knot there kind of thing, and somewhere along here my end milling bit was a little bit loose in the adapter collet. Now you would think if your bit became loose it would disappear up into the router. Because of the force of the router as it's spinning around, it actually sends a bit further out. So if you're ever routing and you start off at a nice section and it just seems like you're getting deeper and deeper for some reason, your bit will not be tight enough and it's getting thrown out of the router and getting deeper in. So we had a couple of sections here, but I caught it at the last minute. In our favour, this will all be coloured with nice black resin. So the good thing about plywood and resin, they go together well, because that resin will cover a lot of this nasty stuff you can see here. So to bear that in mind, ideally this would be nice routed out on pine or some other type of wood. But if you're just starting out and you don't want to waste too much money, get yourself a bit of plywood. The top section is going to be fine. Remember, we're going to cover the back section. Right, so that's all done with those little CNC bits and end milling bits. They've done their job for sure. Now I just want to give it a general tidy up. This is what they call a flexi cable. This is just a cheap eBay special, and that is attached to my Dremel over there in the corner. Now I like to use one of these with some engraving bits. There again, eBay or Amazon. Just you get a pack of 30 of these for next to nothing, and I get one with a nice flat bottom if I can. And we will pop this on here, and if you just go around and just give it a general tidy up. We don't have to focus too much on the background, just get these nice sides done. And I'll go with a bit of sandpaper. You can see there I've done that one there, and if you just remove those pencil lines like so, and get inside here and just give it a general tidy up. Another downside with your plywood, if you're going to use a lot of sanding on this, remember it's made of different layers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in this one. As you're sanding down, you will start to remove the top layer, and you might just see it there on the end of that one, that lighter coloured yellow. That's not going to affect us. We're painting this, but if you're going to put a dye on that, just spray a nice varnish to finish it off. Remember, too much sanding and your top's not going to look as nice as it should. So a quick tidy up with our engraving bit of sandpaper. Then when we come back, we'll get the paints out and work out the colours and what we're going to do with the framework. Notice the framework there, we've got a nice lip going all the way around, and that was done freehand, and that's just enough to make a nice barrier for our resin. So tidy up, and then we'll work out colours, paints, stains, dyes, and whatever else we're going to need on this little project. Right, there's all our tidying up done. We went round with the Dremel, with the engraving bits, and just lightly sanded over, just remove all the pencil lines, and you can see from that everything's still in one piece. And we've not lost anything. And the top's going to look fine, that's no problem whatsoever. Remember, it is a rough background, but we are going to cover all that over. Right, for painting wise, these little painters touch paints, these are great. So we'll colour these. I'm basically going to do the main, I don't have the time, white, and I think I'm going to have just white underneath here so it stands out. And the coloured crayons bit will be the actual word crayon. So we'll go with random colours and we'll make it nice and colourful. And we'll see what it's like when we come back. And then for the framework itself, we might actually just paint that. Or I do believe there's just enough of that dark stain. This has appeared in most of my last few videos, to be honest. So I think I'm ready for some more. And there might just be enough there to do the framework. Okay, let's go inside where it's a little bit warmer. We'll basically start painting this one up. Right, that's all the painting done. Those little painters touch paints, they're ideal for projects like this, indoor and outdoor. Personally myself, I have a little container, bit of water, and every so often just dab your paintbrush into the water and it just helps it flow a little bit better. So we use that for the colours, and still got that dark tea. This is lasting forever more. Just do the framework. I was going to paint that white at one time, but I just thought it might be a little bit too much. The hardest part with the painting was we've had to do all the side walls all the way around. Because when we put the resin in, we want to literally come up maybe, let's say, a millimetre. If we work out there were 3, I think they're deeper than I wanted, to be honest. But we're going to try and come literally halfway up the side of those letters, just so we can still feel that it's a routed out project. So therefore we had to paint the side walls as well. We don't want the bare wood of the plywood showing, but it went on fine. And you can see just a slight gloss here if we just get it right. They are gloss paints, but not glossy enough for me, so we're going to spray some gloss on. You knew it was coming. One, because I do like a nice shiny finish, and it just makes it look like it's finished. And 2, a bit of gloss spray, just Painter's Factory today, which will help just seal the plywood and just help so we don't have so many little air bubbles popping through. Personally myself, I don't think it needs it, but it's not going to do us any harm just to spray the full piece, and it will just darken down the framework, and then we'll go outside and spray the side section as well. So 3 or 4 coats of this, nice shine. We've sealed it all, and then we'll go and find some resin mixed with black acrylic paint, and basically we're just going to fill all the back in, and hopefully all these letters, they will stand out a lot sharper because we've put the black in. Now on previous projects, when I put the stain on, I would normally stain the back of this or paint it just so it gives it a deeper colour with the resin, but black's one of the better colours. If I was going to put a white on the back of this or a yellow resin, you would see that markers there, and any paint you would see coming through if you don't make your colours thick enough, if that makes sense. So, but black's fine, so no need to cover that back section. We've got our spray, and we'll see that framework just getting darker as this goes on. And then we'll liquid go over the whole piece like so. Dries in a matter of seconds, depending on how warm it is. Then I'll put another coat on, and not forgetting all those side walls. Right, that varnish lacquer is all nicely dried now. And you can see from that, I've just got a nice enough shine there, just to say it's been finished. And hopefully we've just sealed that wood. Remember, we're not concerned about the state of the background. This will all be nicely covered, hopefully, with some nice black resin. Now the resin today, one of my favourites for now is Vista 1 resin. Now all your resins are 2-parter. You have A, your resin, and B, your hardener. Now just be careful when you order your resins. This is what they call a 1-to-1 mix. So whatever amount of volume wise of A, we just mix with the exactly same amount of B. Some resins you mix by volume, some resins you will mix by weight. You will require little scales and all the rest of it. Some resins are 2 to 1, 3 to 1 and so on. Some resins are deep pour resins. These are little craft resins. These are ideal for these little projects. Now for mixing wise, I just like to use these little plastic beakers, next to nothing. They're ideal because they've got little grooves up the side, and you can count up, let's say 4 for your A, and then obviously 4 for your B, and I literally just mark it off on 2 containers like that, A and B. I've gone up 6 today, 6 in that, so hopefully that will be enough. We might just get this in one. If not, we can mix a bit more. I'd rather do it that way than mix a full cup full and you've got wastage, and if you mix too much, it can just start going on a bit too quick for you with the reaction with the resin and the flash cure. Is it flash cure? I think they call it. Where the resin just gets too warm and just gets solid before you have a chance to do it. It's happened on me once. I was basically just mixing this round, and as I was mixing, it just went solid. The stirrer ended up being stuck inside, so that was a waste. So I'd just rather mix smaller amounts. And just a side note, with your resins, part A, sometimes that can be solid. Just stand it in warm water for a good half an hour plus, and it will soften up on you. Not all the time, it's just where it's been stored and stuff like that. And for colour, just black acrylic paints, and we're basically going to fill the complete back section of this. Mixing wise, plastic knife and forks, these are ideal. They've got great, lovely groove in the back there, so you can mix it, get it out, and if you just put that where you want it. If that's not your way of doing things, I have tried a syringe once. We can syringe up your resin and squirt it in. I worked out, not so clever for me. And these little plastic pipettes, you can cut the end off, and it is possible to suck the resin up and squeeze that in exactly the same. That also didn't work for me. Personally myself, back of the knife, fork or spoon, and just trickle it in like so. And then we'll get a little cocktail stick. Some of these smaller places, mine's actually broken here, and that will just help feed it round. And once we've covered it all nicely, we'll simply come over the top with a lighter. Now the reason we use a lighter, you will get little air bubbles coming up, and we can just go over that, skim over like so, and that will help get rid of all those bubbles. And on bigger projects, you can bring out the bigger guns, shall we say. Okay, I'll mix some of this resin off camera, and then when we come back, we can basically add our acrylic paints and start filling this one in. Right, so we've mixed up our first batch of resin. Now if you were to stand this in some warm water in a cup, that will go a lot clearer. Basically will end up looking like water. But for me, we can mix it like this. We can afford to do that because we're adding colours, so there's no need for us to let it stand for a couple of minutes just to clear up. Now for colours, just black acrylic paint. Now they do say 10% of whatever you're adding, be it acrylic, powders, inks, there's all sorts out there you can use. For me personally, I've used acrylic paints on a number of my projects and I've had no issues. So I'll just pop some in there straight away, like so. It says hopefully, if there's any in there. Here's a good little dollop for there, we call it. And we can mix that around and we'll see what kind of black we've got. If it's not black enough, we can put a little sample out. We can always add a little bit more just to thicken up that colour. What we don't want to see is the overflow of paint, be it the yellows, greens, coming through the black. So we want it nice and colourful, should we say, nice and black. So that's it. We're going to go at that, I think. Just leave that little bit off there. There we go. And hopefully that should be enough black for what we want. So we'll speed things up, give it a good mix. We can just pull a little sample in. Remember, with your resins, you want proper gloves on, proper resin mask, and plenty of ventilation. Don't follow by my example. To be honest, I've done resin projects for a good 5 years plus, and I've never had any issues, but that is just me. I'm not saying what's going to happen further down the line, but manufacturers do reckon proper mask, gloves, and so and so. Right, so that's it all nicely mixed up. We'll put a little sample in here just to see if it looks dark enough. That looks fairly black to me. I think we might get away with that. Right, let's have a look, see what it looks like, shall we? Yes. That's it, we're ready to pour this in. Remember, these letters will hopefully get nice and crispy once you come up to the edges, and everything looks and stands out a lot better. Okay, let's start filling this one in. Right, there's all our resin in. Personally myself, we could have gone with a little bit more, but I'm going to take my chance on that one. So now we just skim over it with a lighter. That just helps get rid of all the bubbles like so. It's hard to see on the camera, or you could bring out the big guns and just literally just skim over like so. Find a nice cover for it. Keep it covered over. Any flies or dust, they will find it for sure. Okay, we'll come back in 24 hours and we'll see what this one's finished up like. Right, that's it. This little project is finished. Now it's roughly about 24 hours later and that black resin's nicely set. Now that's solid enough for me. Manufacturers do reckon up to 30 days to fully cure. I have my personal interest in that, should I say, but I'm not a resin manufacturer. But for me, I'd definitely leave this another couple of days, if not a week, just to make sure. But that's solid enough from there, and the black's gone nicely, and them letters have really been cleared up nicely, nice and crispy. And there's just enough there. If you just see the side sections, maybe not, there's still a mil or so to play with, so you can still feel that they've nicely been routed out. Now there's two issues with this what I'm not overly happy about, and it's just a personal thing, and as woodworkers we're the worst ones to pick fault. The first one being, I wish there was a bit more of a space in there so to get the I wanted a slightly gap there so we could just pace it out a bit more. Small things, I know, but anybody else might look at that and think, okay, but for me, that's looking like a THAFE. I don't know. So I just want a bigger gap there. And if it comes to it, you could get a Sharpie pen and maybe just take a little bit off the corner there, off that letter T. You bring that T down to there like so, and that will definitely widen that gap. And you won't even be any wiser by putting a bit of black Sharpie pen on the corner of that T. So that would be your I don't. And then you just have a bit of a space there. That's just me being picky. You might look at it yourself and think, it don't look so bad, but it is what it is. And also, on this one, I don't know why it is, and I'm going to try and find them. Just down here, I don't know if you can see it, get the right light. We've got some like little lines effects. There's a couple of lines down there, and I think there's a couple of little squiggly lines up here somewhere. It's really hard to show. Just there, look. Them two there. Now, personally myself, without researching, because I'm not overly bothered about it, I think there might just be too much black acrylic paint. Remember, we did say 10% per mix. So we might have got a bit too much paint in there. So as it's cured, it's just left those lines. Also, it was quite cold yesterday and it's still fresh enough today. So the cold might have affected that resin somehow. They do have certain temperatures that you should work in and all the rest of it. It's never ending. Personally myself, we just get on with the projects, and if it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, we've learned for next time. So for me personally, I can live with that. That's no problem whatsoever. And for hanging purposes, nice little hook on the end there. I normally have that on now, but I've come out to the shed and realised I haven't put it on. But not to worry. And that's it. This little project is finished. So it's routed out on 12mm plywood. We use the CNC bits just to get us going. Doing all the lines with that, remember. These are just my personal choice bits. eBay or Amazon, I will put some links in. So nice CNC bits. Then we come in with the end mill bits. These are fantastic for clearing out. I've used these from day one and I've certainly got no issues. And they're a great price to purchase. So those were for all the clearing out, all the black sections. And then we came in with some dark teak dye, literally just to do the framework. And then we had the Painter's Touch paint, which I realise I haven't put any out, so bear with me, we shall grab one or two. We'll take that one there. So Painter's Touch paints, colours to draw the painting, and then we sprayed it all with a nice gloss varnish. That just gives it a nice shine to those numbers and letters there, look, as you can see, and also the framework. There again, that is just a personal thing. They were gloss paints, so there won't be any need to put any of that stuff on, but just the way I do things. And then for the inset there, the black, just Vista 1 resin, nothing fantastic there. I've been quite happy with that one for now. And I just mixed, this is just Crawford and black, cheap acrylic paints mixed in with the resin. And we poured it all in, and once cured, that is our project finished. And we put quite a bit of resin in this one, but it's still enough. Remember, when your resin cures, you will get a slight concave, so it will sink down slightly. But that is enough, and we can still feel all those nice letters there. And we've got a lovely shine on it, and that's a nice little project. And it measures in at 9.5 inches from corner to corner, and 13 inches from there to there. So that's it. This little project is finished. I don't have the time or the crayons to explain this to you, but I like working with wood. Okay, thank you very much for watching.